the 10th game of the Final Fantasy series, Square's 2001 best-selling role-playing video game Final Fantasy X features several fictional characters designed by Tetsuya Nomura, who wanted the main characters' designs and names to be connected with their personalities and roles in the plot. The game takes place in the fictional universe of Spira that features multiple tribes. The game's sequel, released in 2003, Final Fantasy X-2, takes place 2 years after the events in Final Fantasy X and uses new and returning characters. There are 7 main playable characters in Final Fantasy X, starting with Tidus, a skilled blitzball player from Zanarkand who is lost in the world of Spira after an encounter with an enormous creature called Sin and searches for a way home. He joins the summoner Yuna, who travels towards the Zanarkand's ruins in order to defeat Sin alongside her guardians, Kimahri Ronso, a member of the Ronso tribe. Wakka, the captain of the blitzball team and Besaid. Lulu, a stoic black mage. Orin, a famous warrior and an old acquaintance of Tidus. And Rikku, Yuna's cousin who searches for a way to avoid Yuna's sacrifice in the fight against Sin. The leader of the Guddu tribe, Seymour Guddu, briefly joins the party for a fight but is then revealed as an antagonist in his quest to replace Tidus' father, Jecht, to become the new Sin. Final Fantasy X-2 features Yuna, Rikku, and the newly introduced Paine as playable characters in their quest to find spheres across Spira and find clues regarding Tidus' current location. During their journey, they meet Paine's former comrades who are related with the spirit of an avenger named Shuyin. The creation of these characters brought the Square staff several challenges, as Final Fantasy X was the first game in the franchise to feature voice acting and also had to feature multiple tribes from different parts from Spira with distinctive designs. Various types of merchandising have also been released. The characters from Final Fantasy X and its sequel were praised by video game publications owing to their personalities and designs. The English voice acting received a mixed response during their debut, while in Final Fantasy X-2 the dub received a better response. Cast creation and influences. The character designer from Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X-2 is Tetsuya Nomura. Since art director Yusuke Nora convinced the Square staff to make Final Fantasy X an Asian-themed game, Nomura designed the characters to give them an Asian look. Nomura first illustrated the characters' faces and started adding details upon receiving information from the staff. Since the PlayStation 2's capabilities allowed to feature multiple details, Nomura did so with characters and asked the staff to make them consistent. The hardest part from his work involved making the characters' clothes identical between full-motion scenes and in-game parts. Nomura has expressed after designing serious and moody main characters for Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII, he wanted to give Tidus a cheerful attitude and appearance, which is reflected in the name Nojima chose for him. Nomura has also mentioned a contrast between the lead male and female protagonists was established by Yuna's name meaning night in Okinawan. Since Tidus did not originate from Spira, his outfit was made stand out from the ones from World's inhabitants. Nomura also placed image colors to each main character to give hints regarding their personalities. Since both the player and the main character find themselves in a new world, Nojima wanted Tidus' understanding of the world to reflect the player's progress in the game. A connection that allowed the player to advance Tidus' first-person narration of most of Final Fantasy X. Sub-character chief designer Fumi Nakashima's focus was to ensure that characters from different regions and cultures bore distinctive characteristics in their clothing styles, so that they could be quickly and easily identified as members of their respective subgroups. For example, she has said that the masks and goggles of the Albhed give the group a strange and eccentric appearance, while the attire of the Ronso lend to them being able to easily engage in battle. Final Fantasy X features innovations in the rendering of characters' facial expressions, achieved through motion capture and skeletal animation technology. This technology allowed animators to create realistic lip movements, which were then programmed to match the speech of the game's voice actors. Nojima has revealed that the inclusion of voice acting enabled him to express emotion more powerfully than before, and he was therefore able to keep the storyline simple. He also said that the presence of voice actors led him to make various changes to the script, in order to match the voice actors' personalities with the characters they were portraying. Despite being worried about the inclusion of voice acting, Nomura was satisfied when hearing their clip, as he stated the characters became full of life. The voice acting brought difficulties in the making of the English version of the game, as the localization team has to translate Japanese dialogues into English-oriented lines as well as fit the characters' lip movements. Before starting development of Final Fantasy X-2, Square had planned to make a game following the story of Jecht, Auron and Braska 10 years before the events of Final Fantasy X, but they felt that they would end with a traditional game. For Final Fantasy X-2, Tetsuya Nomura designed the new costumes used by the main characters in order to distance the game from its prequel, while Nomura still remained as the character designer. The outfits are meant to represent the changes from the world of Spira after 2 years of peace. The use of 3 female characters was inspired by multiple films that depict strong female leads. To reinforce this concept, the staff made sure to make the protagonists still look feminine while changing into multiple type of warriors, such as the samurai form, in which feature the characters having troubles wielding large swords. Main protagonists Tidus. Tidus is a skilled 17-year-old blitzball player from Zanarkand and the main protagonist of Final Fantasy X. Though Tidus is his official name, the player has the option of renaming him at the beginning of the game. He plays for Zanarkand's team, the Zanarkand Apes, and washes up near Spira 1,000 years in the future after being attacked by the creature Sin during a blitzball game. He becomes one of Yuna's guardians in order to find a way back to Zanarkand during the journey. Throughout the game, he finds himself coming to terms with his father, Jecht, who has become Sin, dealing with his increasing love for Yuna, and the implications of her pilgrimage. The character's outfit was designed to stand out within the people from Spira due to being from another world, while his lively personality is meant to contrast with previous Final Fantasy protagonists. Tidus has also been featured in the Kingdom Hearts series and is also the hero representing Final Fantasy X in Dissidia Final Fantasy. He is voiced by Masakazu Morita in the Japanese version and James Arnold Taylor in English. Yuna Yuna is a 17-year-old summoner from Spira. In Final Fantasy X, she is the daughter of the late High Summoner Braska, who defeated Sin 10 years ago, and seeks to accomplish the same task with help from her guardians. While often serious and nervous, she gradually becomes more open and falls in love with Tidus during their journey. 2 years after the conclusion of Final Fantasy X, she is spurred on a journey of self-discovery by the possibility of reuniting with Tidus, which results in her becoming the main character of Final Fantasy X-2. Yuna has also been featured in Kingdom Hearts 2 and Dissidia 01-2 Final Fantasy. She is voiced by Hide Barres and Mayuko Aoki in the English and Japanese versions, respectively. Orin is a 35-year-old warrior known as the legendary Guardian who helped Jecht and Braska defeat Sin. Shortly after Sin's defeat, Orin started watching over Tidus from afar at Jecht's request. In the game's present day, he sends Tidus to Spira using the new Sin that is Jecht. After meeting Tidus once again, the two start serving as guardians for Yuna, Braska's daughter, in another journey to defeat Sin. It is eventually revealed during the game that Auron attacked the unsent summoner Yuna in a fit of rage after she revealed that Braska and Jecht needlessly gave their lives against Sin, and that she struck him down with a mortal wound. Despite his injuries, Auron managed to make it down Mount Gagazet before his strength abandoned him just outside Bevel. As he was dying, he met Kimahri Ronso and asked him to fulfill the promise he had made to Braska, that Yuna be moved from Bevel to Besaid so she can have a peaceful childhood. Afterward, he became an unsent, and secretly held this status for nearly the entire duration of the game. At the end of the game, when Sin's creator, Yu Yevon, is defeated, he is laid to rest. Auron has a brief appearance in Final Fantasy X-2, where his voice helps Yuna during her battle in the far plane with Venagun. The updated international version added Auron both as a boss and as an optional playable character. Auron is voiced by Matt Mackenzie in the English version and Hideo Ishikawa in the Japanese version of Final Fantasy X. While the developers originally considered having Final Fantasy X-2 follow the story of Auron and Jecht's generation, they eventually let this idea pass due to the concept making the game too traditional, deciding instead to go with the trio of Yuna, Rikku, and Paine. In initial versions of Auron was a crusader, an exterminator of monsters from Zanarkand, but as the story involved deceased people, the staff decided to make him an unsent. Orin was planned to be Jecht in disguise, but such idea was scrapped. Orin appears in Kingdom Hearts 2 as a one-world ally in the Olympus Coliseum. He is brought back to life by Hades in order to kill Hercules, but Orin refuses to aid him. He joins Sora's group in escaping from the underworld, but he is later brainwashed by Hades into fighting Hercules. During the battle, Sora restores Orin's free will, and he joins them and Hercules to defeat Hades. A super-deformed version of Orin appears in Itadaki Street Special. In 2008, Games Radar ranked Orin's glasses 10th in the top 10 famous glasses. Orin ranked 5th on Electronic Gaming Monthly Euro's Top 10 Bartless Undead. In a Famitsu poll done in February 2010, Orin was voted by readers as the 33rd most popular video game character. In its December 2010 cover feature, Game Informer named Orin one of their 30 characters who defined a decade, describing him as one of the most complex RPG companions in gaming history. In 2011, Games Radar used Orin as an example of a badass commenting, a smooth-talking, shades-wearing, long-coat-rocking snarker who can wield a huge sword with his one good arm. He is a badass, and nobody can deny it. With that perfect storm of cool, he has nothing to worry about. In 2013, Complex ranked Auron 4th in the 20 greatest Final Fantasy characters of all time, and 18th in their 25 dead video game characters we wish were still here. Wakka Wakka is a 23-year-old professional blitzball player who is characterized by having a long reddish-orange quiff and being tall and muscular in appearance. He uses speech mannerisms as saying brother for brother, and sometimes finishing sentences with ya for right or okay. In addition to being one of Yuna's guardians and childhood friends, he is captain of the Besaid Aurochs, a blitzball team that was at the beginning of Final Fantasy X. Went 23 years without winning a single game. Wakka lost his younger brother Seymour to Sin a year before the events of Final Fantasy X, and he never fully recovered from it. He forms a close brotherly relationship with Tidus, partially fueled by his resemblance to Seymour, though Lulu constantly has to remind him that Tidus is not Seymour. As a devout follower of Yevon's teachings, Wakka believes that anyone who does not believe in Yevon, like the Albhed, are evil heathens, and is staunchly against the use of machina. However, he begins to question both his faith by the time Yevon's true colors are exposed to the world. Near the game's ending, Wakka denounces his prior beliefs entirely. 6 months after the events of Final Fantasy X, he marries Lulu. In Final Fantasy X-2, he becomes a father to their baby son, Vidana, a name thought up by Wakka. Wakka is voiced by Kazuya Nakai in Japanese and John DiMaggio in English. A younger version of Wakka makes a cameo appearance in Kingdom Hearts on Destiny Islands as a friend of a younger Tidus and Final Fantasy via a selfie and a sparring partner who can be engaged in battle, fighting with a beach ball. He makes a smaller cameo in Kingdom Hearts, Chain of Memories as well as Kingdom Hearts Coded. In Kingdom Hearts, he is voiced by D. Bradley Baker. Lulu Lulu is a 22-year-old black magic user and an older sister figure to Yuna, whom she grew up with alongside Wakka and Seymour on Besaid Island. Before becoming one of Yuna's guardians, she had previously accompanied 2 other summoners as their guardians. While she is often stern and scathing, she is nonetheless caring toward others. She appears in a reduced role for Final Fantasy X-2, where she has a child with Wakka named Vidana. She is voiced by Paula Tiso and Ryo Natsuki in the English and Japanese versions respectively. Kimahri Ronso Kimahri Ronso is a 25-year-old warrior from the Ronso tribe and Yuna's first and most faithful guardian. He has known and protected her since she was a 7-year-old child. he is not well accepted by the other Ronso, who view him as inferior due to his shorter stature and broken horn. When Tidus' group arrives at Mount Gagazit, Kimahri is confronted by Byron and Yenke Ronso, who challenge him a Euro, and thus the player a Euro to a 2-on-1 battle as an obstacle to the player's progression. Following Kimahri's victory, he has proven his worth as a Ronso. After departing from Mount Gagazit in shame 10 years before the current events depicted in Final Fantasy X began, Kimahri discovered a dying Orin outside Bevel. Orin told Kimahri about the daughter of Braska, Yuna, and asked him to fulfill a promise Orin had made to Braska in his stead, to remove Yuna from Bevel and transport her to the island of Besaid, where she may grow up peacefully. Kimahri honored Orin's request and made sure that Yuna arrived at Besaid safely. When his task was completed, he prepared to depart, yet Yuna pleaded with him to remain with her, and he complied. In Final Fantasy X-2, Kimahri is depicted as the new elder of the Ronso tribe. Kimahri's difficulties as chief comprise several playable missions, most notably involving a disagreement he has with a young Ronso named Garrick, who desires to seek vengeance upon the Guddu for the Ronsos killed by Seymour in the previous game, as well as find two Ronso children, Leon and Aid, who are in search of adventure and a way to fix Kimahri's broken horn. Eventually, Kimahri realizes that all Ronso should follow the example of Leon and Aid in trying to find their own individual paths while working together to forge a better future for one another, and that he alone cannot provide a single answer to what the future of the entire group should be. He is voiced by Katsumi Ka in Japanese and John DiMaggio in English. Rikku. Rikku is a 15-year-old LBHED girl who is Sid's daughter and brother's younger sister. She helps Tidus when he first arrives in Spira, but then disappears during an attack from Sin. Upon meeting Tidus again at the Moonflow, she becomes the last character to join Yuna's entourage of guardians. Her attitude is somewhat childish, but is also quite cheerful and positive. Sid's sister married Braska, which makes him Rikku's uncle, and also makes her Yuna's cousin, and, as such, wishes to prevent her from going through with her pilgrimage as summoners die after defeating Sin. Rikku returns in Final Fantasy X-2 as a protagonist, now a part of the sphere hunting group called the Gullwings. She is voiced by Marika Matsumoto in Japanese and Tara Strong in English. Paine. Paine is a protagonist of Final Fantasy X-2. While Final Fantasy X characters Yuna and Rikku were planned as stars of X-2, she was created for X-2. Paine is prominently featured as a warrior. In contrast to Yuna and Rikku, she is more calm and closed off, with her comrades knowing little about her. Throughout the game, the player learns of Paine's experience as a member of the Crimson Squad, which was intended to be an elite unit to surpass the Crusaders. The best members were to be assigned to lead Crusader chapters across Spira. Paine had also been the recorder for a group of candidates named Nuj, Baralai, and Gibbal, the game's present-day leaders of the Youth League, New Yevon, and the Machine faction, respectively. Most of the Crimson Squad candidates died during the group's final field exercise due to the influence of the undead Shuyin, who caused them to turn on one another while getting a glimpse of Venagun. Only Nuj, Baralai, Gibbal and Paine escaped alive from the Yevon monks, but later, Nuj, a Euro possessed by Shuyin, a Euro fired on his friends, effectively ending their friendship for 2 years. Just before Yuna joined the Gullwings, Paine enlisted in the group in the hopes of finding out more about why the Crimson Squad had been massacred a Euro, and because she had long desired to fly in an airship. In Final Fantasy X-2 International Plus Last Mission, Yuna, Rikku and Paine reunite after being disbanded 3 months after the game ended, exploring a newly discovered tower. Paine appears in Kingdom Hearts 2 with an updated super-deformed and fairy-like design, as do Yuna and Rikku. She is voiced by Gwendolyn Yo and Megumi Toyoguchi in English and Japanese versions, respectively. Yo explains that she both was given liberties in how she read the script, as well as watching scenes beforehand to figure how they should be said. Yo found Paine to be true to life, commenting that the writers left no stone unturned with the plot and writing. She compared herself to Paine, describing her as similarly wry. Antagonists. Sin. Sin is an enormous creature that moves through Spira's oceans in its attacks towards mankind, killing a large number of people and destroying towns. Sin's form is vaguely whale-like in appearance, though vastly more massive, and the creature is able to release remnants known as Sin spawns. Scenario writer Kazushige Nojima compared with Sin a typhoon due to the disaster it causes in the world. Summoners are tasked with destroying Sin with a creature known as the Final Eon, sacrificing themselves so that Spira can enjoy a peaceful period known as the Calm until Sin is reborn. Unbeknownst to most of Spira, the Final Eon is always made from the faith of one of the Summoner's own guardians, and it is possessed by the spirit of Yu Yevon, Sin's creator, to be transformed into a new Sin after the previous Sin is destroyed. After the Final Eon destroys the body or armor of the previous Sin, Yu Yevon possesses the Final Eon and kills the Summoner. The possessed Eon's power is then used by Yu Yevon to create a new Sin, with Jecht being the current incarnation during Final Fantasy X. At the end of the game, the party must fight and destroy each Eon possessed by Yu Yevon in order to draw him out into the open so that he can be destroyed, and thus Yu Yevon does not possess an Eon, leaving him unable to create a new Sin. This final death of Sin marks the beginning of the eternal calm, as Spira is freed from its long cycle of death and destruction. Jecht Jecht is Tidus' father, and a blitzball celebrity in his hometown of Dreams Zanarkand. Jecht is a tall, muscular, and surly man armed with a large sword. He is voiced by Greg Berger in English and Majuo Amada in Japanese. It is mentioned multiple times in-game that Tidus hates Jecht, as he often verbally abused him as a child. However, Jecht deeply loved Tidus, but found himself unable to express it in a kind way. Jecht became Nomura's favorite character from Final Fantasy X. He designed as the finishing model was identical to his first sketches. Before the start of Final Fantasy X, Jecht was taken to Spira by Sin, and was thought to be dead in Zanarkand. In Spira, Jecht joined Auron as one of Braska's guardians to defeat Sin. Having lost hope of returning home, Jecht gave his life to become Braska's final Eon, which temporarily defeated Sin. Beforehand, he requests that Auron take care of Tidus, believing that Auron could find a way to dream Zanarkand, and Auron agrees. As a consequence, Jecht became the new Sin 10 years later. Sometime later, Jecht asserts some control over Sin, makes his way to the dream Zanarkand, and communicates with Auron, to transport Tidus to the Spira mainland, repeatedly communicating with his son so that he could find a way to permanently dispose of Sin. Near the end of the game, Tidus' group confronts Jecht inside Sin taking the form of Braska's final Eon. Before Jecht's death in battle, Tidus makes peace with his father. Jecht has a small voice cameo in the final battles of Final Fantasy X-2 along with Braska and Auron, during which time they give the protagonists encouraging words and advice on where to strike at the machine Venagun. Jecht is the villain representing Final Fantasy X in Dissidia Final Fantasy. As revealed in the prequel Dissidia 01-2 Final Fantasy, Jecht is a warrior of Cosmos, who gives up his position to save Tidus' life before he turned into a warrior of Chaos. Seymour Guddu Seymour Guddu is the leader of the Guddu Nation, a race of demi-humans in the world of Spira as well as Maester of Yevon. He inherited both positions after the death of his father, Lord Skull Guddu. Seymour is half Guddu and half human, as his father married a human woman in an attempt to foster friendship between the Guddu and human races. Junichi Suabe voices him in Japanese and Alex Fernandez in English. He is briefly playable during Operation Mihen, a part of the game in which the Crusaders and the Albhed join forces to stop Sin. While often formal, Seymour hides a twisted desire to save Spira by becoming Sin and destroying the world. This resulted from his father's treatment, who had his wife and son exiled to the island of Budge since Seymour was considered an abomination by the Guddus. Afterwards, Seymour's mother gave her life in the Budge temple to become the faith of the Eon Anima, believing that by sacrificing herself for Spira's temporary peace against Sin, her son will be accepted by Spira's people. At 18 years of age, Seymour's exile was revoked and he soon killed Skull and took his position. He asks summoner Yuna to marry him, seemingly to further unite Spira, as they both have mixed parentage, being the offspring of a human and another race. When Yuna's guardians learn of Seymour's motives, they stand against him and kill him. Seymour's spirit is able to remain in the living world and become an unsent. Seymour later reveals his plans for Yuna to have her turn him into the next Sin. His piflies are later absorbed by Sin. There, Seymour begins seeking a means to control the creature from within. During this process, he is confronted a final time by Yuna and her guardians, who manage to break their way inside the creature's body. However, he is defeated and is sent to the far plane by Yuna. In Final Fantasy X-2, Seymour appears only in a flashback cutscene that shows him assisting Baralai to hide from the Yevon Order. In Final Fantasy X-2 International, Seymour can be fought in the Battle Simulator tournament and also be added as a member of the party. Yunalesca Yunalesca is a legendary summoner and the daughter of Yevon from 1 millennium before the events of the games. She was the first person to defeat Sin, using the process known as the final summoning, sacrificing herself and her husband, Lord Zan. Although she died in the battle, Yunalesca remained as an unsent to instruct her successors in their pilgrimage to defeat Sin's ever-regenerating incarnations. When Yuna and her guardians refuse to sacrifice anyone for the final summoning, Yunalesca fights the party but is defeated and vanishes. She reappears in the Via Infinito in Final Fantasy X-2 as the Fiend Kak, while Zan reappears as the Fiend, Paragon. She is voiced by Yako Koyanagi in Japanese and Julia Fletcher in English. Yevon Yevon is the ruler of the original Zanarkand and the father of Lady Yunalesca. Near the end of the war between Zanarkand and Bevel, Yevon and the remaining townspeople and summoners decided to preserve the overpowered Zanarkand at all costs. They all become faith for the summoning of Dream Zanarkand, and then drawing on millions of piflies with gravity spells, Yevon creates Sin. The mental effort necessary to create both Dream Zanarkand and Sin essentially wipes Yevon's mind clean, overwriting it with his final command, summon Dream Zanarkand and continuously create Sin. If Sin is destroyed, he then recreates it by possessing the final Eon that defeats it. In the end, Tidus' group use the Eons to weaken the disembodied spirit of Yevon, and destroy him. Shuyin is the main antagonist of Final Fantasy X-2. He is a native blitzball star from Zanarkand who had lived during the age of the Mechina War between Zanarkand and Bevel. The lover of the summoner Len, he refused to accept her fate when she was ordered to the front lines and attempted to commandeer Bevel's Mechina weapon, Venagun, in the hopes of using it to end the war and save Len. Both Shuyin and Len were gunned down in front of Venagun after she prevented him from using it to take many lives for her sake. Sealed in the Den of Woes, Shuyin's unsent spirit was filled with despair and self-loathing, not capable of fading away and be free of his suffering. Shuyin desires to destroy all of Spira in the hopes that his agony may be able to end and that there can never again be a war like the one that cost him and Len their lives. Unlike other deceased people, Shuyin is called a shadow of his original self, being able to take a physical form. This allows him to possess people or faiths, using their eons to help him. He is eventually defeated and shortly reunited with Len before they fade away. In response to rumors that Tidus was created by the faith based on Shuyin, Square stated it cannot be certain that Tidus is a duplication of Shuyin due to the fact, the inhabitants of Dream Zanarkand began to blend in a different way from the real one. Like Tidus, he is voiced by James Arnold Taylor in English, and Masakazu Morita in Japanese. Other characters. Sid is the leader of the Albhed, brother and Rikku's father, and Yuna's maternal uncle. He is responsible for bringing the Albhed together after it was scattered by Yevon years before Final Fantasy X, and for abducting summoners after Braska's calm to ensure that the summoners after him, especially Yuna, would not sacrifice themselves to destroy Sin. This attack ultimately results with the Guddu race attacking the Albhed's home, which forces Sid to destroy it. He uses the airship his children salvaged, dubbed the Fahrenheit, to aid Tidus and company in fighting Sin. After the events of Final Fantasy X, Sid is one of the few to receive a negative impact from Sin's demise, as his children left him behind to set their sights on the changing Spira, rather than rebuilding home like most of the other LBHED. In Final Fantasy X-2, he attempts to convert Zanarkand into a tourist attraction, only to make his way to the Thunder Plains. After being saved from an ancient machina, Sid goes on board the Gullwing's Celsius, much to Brother's dismay. However, by Final Fantasy X-2 Intonation plus Last Mission, Sid returns to make business in Mount Gagazet alongside his son. He is voiced by Kaiki Sakaguchi in Japanese and Michael McShane in English. Brother is Sid's son, Riku's older brother, Braska's nephew, and Yuna's cousin. The character is voiced by David Risner in English and Takayuki Yamaguchi in Japanese. Brother participates in the LBHED expedition to salvage an airship from the ocean floor, where he meets Tidus. Eventually, he goes on to support the protagonist's struggle against Sin and Yevon as the pilot of the salvaged Fahrenheit. During Final Fantasy X-2, Brother is the pilot of his own airship, the Celsius, and is leader of the Gullwing's Sphere Hunter group with Buddy and Shinra working alongside him in the ship. Having fallen out with Sid after the events of Final Fantasy X, father and son frequently and unsuccessfully try to bury the hatchet and make up. He has feelings for Yuna, and often makes passes at her. But in the long run, Brother eventually resigns himself to an unrequited love, preferring the Yuna he knew her as 2 years ago compared to as she is now. In Intonation plus Last Mission, Brother helps his father with his business in Mount Gagazet. Lord Braska Lord Braska is Yuna's father, Sid's brother-in-law, and Rikku and Brother's uncle. He is the summoner who defeated Sin and brought the calm 10 years before the events in Final Fantasy X, earning him the title of High Summoner. During a mission to repair relations with the LBHED, Braska met and fell in love with Sid's sister, and the two got married. After Yuna's birth, Braska's wife was killed by Sin. Because of this, Braska decided to become a summoner and embarked on a pilgrimage with his guardians, Orin and Jecht, to defeat Sin. People were initially skeptical about his and his guardians' ability to defeat Sin, but Braska reached Zanarkand, where he sacrificed his life to turn Jecht into the final Eon and defeat Sin. He is voiced by Andy Philpott in English and by Takuma Suzuki in Japanese. When Braska's voice is heard in the final fight of X-2, the English voice actor is D. Bradley Baker rather than Andy Philpott. Len is a famous songstress and summoner from Zanarkand during the time of the Machina War, and Shuyin's lover. She was forced to the front lines to fight along with the other summoners in the city. Shuyin attempted to use Bevel's Machina weapon, Venagun, to defeat Bevel and save her life. Len convinced Shuyin to stop, but the couple was then gunned down by Bevel's soldiers. Upon her death, her spirit was somehow crystallized into Yuna's songstress Dressphere, which contains her memories. Yuna begins to feel Len's presence and feelings more and more until they explode on stage. Because Yuna unknowingly serves as Len's host, Shuyin only sees Len rather than Yuna herself whenever she dons her songstress outfit. After Shuyin is defeated, Len separates herself from the Dressphere and fades with Shuyin while thanking Yuna for helping her. She is voiced by Cree Summer in English, and Kumi Koda in Japanese. Marichan is an elderly itinerant historian who often tells Tidus the history and origins of all things related to Spira. Although he seems to be an ordinary inhabitant of Spira, he reveals himself in Final Fantasy X-2 to be an unsent from Zanarkand who used to live before the city was destroyed, and was so engrossed in his studies that he forgot that he died of old age. His memories of his time in Zanarkand are rekindled when he shakes Yuna's hand and realizes her resemblance with Len. He is voiced by Dwight Schultz in English and Takuma Suzuki in Japanese. Chocobo Knights The Chocobo Knights are a team of Chocobo riding soldiers, Lucille, the captain, Elma, the second in command, and Klasko are the only named members of the group. Alongside the Crusaders and the ALBHED, the group works in Operation Mayan in an attempt to defeat Sin. However, the plan fails and only the Chocobo Knights and one Chocobo survive to the fight against Sin, In Final Fantasy X-2, Lucille, Elma, and Klasko have joined the Youth League, although Klasko later leaves to become a Chocobo breeder. Crusaders. The Crusaders are a semi-military organization which role is to protect Spira's towns from sin and other monsters. They were founded by Lord Mayan 8 centuries before the events of Final Fantasy X, and are incorporated into the Yevon clergy. Members of the Crusaders include the high-ranked Luzzu and the younger, lower-ranked Gatta, while Wakka's brother, Shaper, died a year ago fighting sin. Depending on the player's actions, either Luzzu or Gatta dies during Operation Mayan, while the other one survives and returns to Besaid to rebuild the village's Crusader branch. Donya. Donya is a 26-year-old female summoner who mocks Yuna for having a large group of guardians while remarking that Lord Braska only needed 2. Her one guardian is Barthelo, an admirer of Auron, and significantly more friendly than Donya. After escaping from home in the airport, Tidus can influence Donya to either continue or quit her pilgrimage. In Final Fantasy X-2, Donya has joined the Youth League while Barthelo has sided with New Yevon. Although they are on opposite sides of the conflict, they still have feelings for one another, which lead them to make up later. She is voiced by Naneho Katsuragi in Japanese and Candy Milo in English. Isaru. Isaru is a summoner guarded by his younger brothers Paix and Marauder. Since he was a child, Isaru has always looked up to Braska, and sets up a challenge with Yuna to see who will defeat Sin first. At Besaid, Isaru's party gets kidnapped by the Albhed and are present at Home's destruction. He is later sent by Yomika to prevent Yuna from escaping the Via Purifico, and reluctantly fights her with his Aeons. Defeated, he remains in Bevel to preserve order along with Paix and Marauder. The three brothers part ways in Final Fantasy X-2. Isaru helps out with the ruin tours in Zanarkand, Marauder joins the Youth League, and Paix starts a sphere hunting group known as the Kinderguardians. Eventually, all three reunite in Bevel and Marauder decides to assist Isaru with his pursuits there. He is voiced by Akio Suyama in Japanese and Quinton Flynn in English. Yevon Order. The Yevon Order is the unique religious organization in Spira. It has been ruled by Grand Master Yomika since 50 years before the events of the game. When Yuna asks Yomika to send the unsent Seymour during her trial in Bevel, Mika reveals that he too is an unsent, having remained in Spira to guide its people even after death. Although Mika condemns Yuna as a traitor for killing Seymour and questioning Yevon, he eventually repeals the condemnation in an attempt to prevent order from breaking down. When he learns that the party has defeated Yunalesca, and thus placed the final summoning out of reach forever, he departs to the Farplane, believing that the end of Spira is near. The other Maesters include Wenkinok, the leader of the Crusaders and warrior monks and old friend of Orin, who is killed by Seymour after Yuna's trial. Kelc Ronzo, a Yevon Maester and leader of the Ronso tribe, who leaves the former after learning that Seymour had committed a patricide but is killed by Seymour. And Seymour Guddu, the deceased Maester of Yevon killed by his own son Seymour. However, in the events of Final Fantasy X-2, Seymour, Kinok and Mika appear unexplainably as an unsent within the depths of Via Infinito and become themes. Leblanc Syndicate. The Leblanc Syndicate is a group of sphere hunters based in Guadosalam, and a rival of the Gullwings. Leblanc, the arrogant leader of the syndicate, became a sphere hunter because of her infatuation with Myvn Nush. The syndicate is composed of Ormi, Logos, and others who were all outcasts in some fashion until Leblanc helped them out. As a result, they follow Leblanc out of dependence and gratitude. After Venagan begins to stir and retreats from Bevel, Leblanc becomes depressed and goes to search for Nush. She eventually decides to team up with the Gullwings to get into the Farplane, find Nush, and fight Venagan. Gippal. Gippal is the founder of the Albhed machine faction that pioneers in mechina research. While they possess heavy military power, they prefer to avoid interventions in politics. Gippal is also a former candidate for the Crimson Squad, who once served with Nush and Baralai. Their friendship was broken on the day of their final candidate exercise, when they turned on each other while under Shuyin's control. Gippel dedicates himself to studying Machina to subdue or destroy Shuyin's Venagun. During the game, he and his former comrades reunite to help save Spira from Shuyin. He is voiced by Kenichi Suzumura in Japanese and Rick Gomez in English. Baralai Baralai is the leader of the new Yevon Party organization inspired by the defunct Yevon religion following the replacement of its founding leaders. Though New Yevon's goal is to make up for the former Yevon Order's transgressions and help those who feel overwhelmed by the rapid changes sweeping Spira, their ideals that a slow evolution of Spira's customs is the only way to prevent complete anarchy made them antagonized by the Youth League for being as furtive as the Yevon clergy before them. Baralai is also a former Crimson Squad candidate who becomes involved in Shuyin's quest of revenge. He is possessed by Shuyin to control Venagun, but Shuyin leaves him upon Venagun's destruction. Shortly afterwards, Baralai reconciles with his old friends. He is voiced by Kenji Sobu in Japanese and Josh Gomez in English. Mush is the leader of the Youth League organization which emerged in the wake of Sin's defeat and whose members advocate radical reform of Spira's society. Its progressive attitude has attracted former Crusaders and younger inhabitants of Spira to its ranks. Mush is also a former Crusader who lost his left arm and leg during a battle against Sin and replaced them with Machina prosthetics. After an incident caused by Shuyin's spirit, Mush was possessed by Shujin, and shot his friends Paine, Gippel and Baralia, resulting in their split. When Shuyin leaves Mush and possesses Baralai, Mush joins Gippel in a quest to free Baralai. In stopping Shuyin, Mush reunites with his old friends. He is voiced by Nobuto Shikana in Japanese and George Newbern in English. Chuami is a young girl who appears in the audio drama Final Fantasy X, while alongside her friend Kurgam. The two are sent to Besaid by Baralai to meet with Yuna. After meeting Yuna, Kurgam shows her a movie sphere with a recording of two shoe puffs at the Moonflow. Chuami also claims to be Orin's daughter, but Lulu negates similarities between the two. While eavesdropping on the conversation between Tidus and Yuna, the two part ways, with Chuami returning to Besaid with Tidus, and Kurgam staying with Yuna and Wakka in Bevel. She is voiced by Ayumi Takamune in Japanese and Eden Riegal in English. Cultural impact. Merchandising. Near the release of the first game, Square released multiple types of merchandising featuring the cast of Final Fantasy X, including plushes and action figures. A CD titled Final Fantasy X Vocal Collection contains monologues and character songs by the Japanese voice actors. Another CD is an extended play with themes by actors Masakazu Morita and Mayuko Aoki, who do the characters of Tidus and Yuna, respectively. A 3-CD album, Final Fantasy X-2 Vocal Collection, was also released featuring tracks by the actors behind Yuna, Rikku and Paine. A new action figures for Tidus was also released in commemoration of Final Fantasy Euro 20th anniversary alongside other protagonists from the franchise. Critical response. Critical reception to the characters from Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X-2 has been positive. The cast from Final Fantasy X has been well received by IGN's David Smith for their characteristics which avoided cliché copyright commenting that supporting cast was rock solid. IGN also appreciated the variety of characters based on Spira's regions, favorably comparing it with the ones from Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy IX. They also found the supporting cast rock solid. GameSpot writer Greg Kasavin found the game's cast entertaining and emphasized how different was Tidus from previous Final Fantasy heroes in terms of personality, yet still was appealing. Eurogamer's Tom Bramwell noted how the character development from the main cast converged to bind the group and the player on an emotional level, and stated that thanks to the animation, the game is transformed into more of a movie than a game at times. Various characters have also stood out within the Final Fantasy franchise and games in general, with Tidus and Yuna appearing in GameZone's list of the 10 best Final Fantasy characters, as well in a Famitsu poll of the best 100 video game characters, with GameZone praising the two characters' attitudes. Additionally, Tidus and Yuna have been listed by several publications as one of the best couples in gaming. GameSpot cited the romance's progress across the game as one of its strongest elements, while Games Radar referred to it as a realistic relation. The main cast of Final Fantasy X-2 was also praised, with writers comparing the trio with the protagonists from Charlie's Angels. Raymond Padilla from GameSpy also praised the game's visual, which resulted in appealing character designs. The change of several designs in Final Fantasy X-2 resulted in mixed reactions, with GameSpot criticizing a dominantly light-hearted tone in comparison to Final Fantasy's darker atmosphere, while IGN praised the clothing designs, combining proven and recognizable Final Fantasy styles with a revealing neo-modern fashion sense. The voice casting was praised by Game Revolution, who noted most of them were above average. Bramwell was more critical, owing to the lack of lip-syncing and unsuitable tones that made him wonder why could not the gamers listen to the original Japanese audio. Criticism to the English acting in Final Fantasy X was aimed towards James Arnold Taylor's and Hdy Baressa's portrayal of Tidus and Yuna, respectively, in comparison to the original Japanese delivery, which made the characters less interesting. The English release of Final Fantasy X-2 won the 7th Annual Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Award in 2004 for outstanding achievement in character performance in recognition of the character Rikku. References